Okay. Can everyone hear me now?
Just 1 second. नाम पे right click करो. Participant उधर भी है. Spotlight. For everyone. Yeah. Shall we start? Yeah, you can. Yes, brother, we can start.
Okay. Let me know when you can see my screen. Okay.
Not yet. Just giving feedback. Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, brother.
Okay. So, welcome everyone. My name is David. I'll be doing a session on youth apologetics today. The main reason for this particular topic is because in today's world, there are a lot of people who have questions regarding God's existence, primarily unbelievers, and most of their questions are genuine and they are meaningful. Back in my day when I was a kid, there were a lot of people who believed at least in the existence of God. They were just skeptical who this God is. But in today's world, there are many people who don't believe in God. They some of them genuinely seek for a reason to believe in God. By reason, I mean some sort of evidence that would convince them. So that was the motivation for today's talk. So let me start with this presentation. Okay, so before we jump into what youth apologetics is, I'd just like to give you a brief introduction on what apologetics actually means. It simply means to give a defense. And in this context, it's giving a defense regarding Christianity and the Christian faith. It's being able to give good reasons to the unbelievers to show them that why we believe what we believe. We have to give them some reason. It's not a blind faith that we have in God, right? And why is this necessary? So in the beginning, I gave you a few examples on why this was necessary. Here are some more reasons why there is a need for apologetics, right? So apologetics would show us primarily that our faith in God is not purely emotional. Don't get me wrong, our faith should also have an emotional content, an emotional element, but our faith being merely emotional, only emotional, is a problem because our feelings fluctuate. But you don't hold on to God and give up on God because your feelings fluctuate, right? We stick to God regardless of what we go through. So, apologetics helps us to show that faith is not merely emotional but rational. It helps us to answer tough questions that are really stumbling blocks to many genuine unbelievers who are seeking God. Now, many of you might have this question popped up in your head saying that, not a question, but a point saying that you don't have enough time. Now, when you say you don't have a time to spend with God, it's really essential to take a step back, take a deep breath, and ask yourself where your priorities are. If God is not in the first, is not the top priority in your life, then maybe it's time to reevaluate your priorities, reevaluate your life, right? Now, I'm not saying you need to spend every day in apologetics or such technical topics, perhaps theology or philosophy, but maybe once in a while you could, you know, and even small amounts of effort, you know, helps greatly on the long run. Because you will not only help unbelievers, but you may also end up helping believers who are struggling with the faith themselves, right? So, if I could just quote a verse from the Bible, from the book of Psalms 42:1, as you can see in the slide, King David, he was God's favorite, right? And what does he say? As the deer pants for the streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. Now, this is the kind of hunger and thirst we believers must have towards God. Now, King David was not God's favorite for random reasons, right? There was something King David did which made him God's favorite. God calls him a man of my own heart. Why does he do that? Because This is one of the reasons the King David longed to be with God all the time. He had such big thirst and hunger to learn from God, to spend time with Him. We should try to be more like King David. So next time when you think you don't have time, please consider this example. Now let's get into what youth apologetics is. It's basically apologetics, but it's mainly aimed at answering young audiences' objections. Now, you might come across many skeptics who have different kinds of questions, but most of the young audiences have similar kind of questions that I have handled in this presentation, and I'll be sharing them with you. So this particular session is restricted to this particular a particular set of audience, which is the young audience in this case. So in my experience, I have encountered three types of young skeptics. Okay, and I'm going to tell you uh, who are they. The first type is someone who would ask for evidence for God's existence. His questions would start something like, "What is the proof? Where is God? Do you have any evidence? Is there any proof? Why should I believe in your God or his God or whatever?" So this is the first kind of skeptic. And then the second kind of skeptic is someone who expects a response to God's silence. What I mean is that his questions start with, where is God in the midst of pain and suffering? There is so much pain and suffering in this world. And if our God is truly a God that exists, who is really powerful, who is all loving, all good, then why are innocent people suffering? Why is there so much pain and suffering in this world? This is a very important question. I will be handling each of them. And the third type of skeptic that I've come across is someone who is apathetic, which means he doesn't care. His questions start with, why should I care if God exists? Why? How does my life change? Or there's nothing in my life that changes based on God's existence. If God exists, good for him. If it doesn't exist, good for him. I don't care. Now, this is the attitude of the third kind of skeptic that I've come across. So, regarding the first kind of skeptic, this is one of the best arguments in my experience that I've come across, that I've shared with uh, many of these skeptics, that I have found to be really helpful. And this is a very easy argument that every one of us can learn. You don't have to go into deep technical details. You can just learn it, learn the basics of it, and you will be able to evidence for God's existence. The argument that I'm speaking about here is the argument for the beginning of the universe. We can also call it the cosmological argument. It just has three premises. We start with whatever begins to exist has a cause, and then two, the universe began to exist, and three, which is the conclusion, therefore the universe has a cause. All you need to do is just show that the first two premises of this argument are true. And if you can show that, then the conclusion, which is the third point, would logically follow. Now, regarding the first premise, I don't think you would find anyone who would deny it, because everything that begins to exist in this world that every one of us have seen has to have a cause. A house began to exist, cause a couple of people who built it. All right? A tree began to exist, cause a seed was planted there, either by an animal, a squirrel, which in most cases, or by a human. So we see this example of cause and effect throughout our life. So I haven't personally met a skeptic who would say that things can begin to exist without a cause. And if you come across a skeptic like that, you could just tell him that that is actually worse than magic, because at least with the magic you have a magician and a hat. A magician is pulling a rabbit out of something, but uh, believing that something can pop into existence out of nothing would be worse than magic. And the second point is that the universe began to exist. Now, in the earlier days, if you go 30 or 40 years back, there were a couple of scientists who we're agreeing theoretically that the universe could have been eternal, it has always existed, and so on. But recent scientific evidence, perhaps in the early 2000s, have concluded with undeniable proof that our universe, or if there is any other universe as well, or even the multiverse, has to have a beginning. There is no escape for anyone now. They have to believe that the universe has a beginning with undeniable proof. Now, if any of you is interested in more details to this argument, I would be happy to share you certain YouTube content. You can have a look at it. And then the conclusion now automatically follows. Now, if everything that you've seen and everything that begins to exist has a cause, and universe is also something that began to exist then, therefore what? Therefore, the universe also has a cause. Now, in my experience, skeptics, some of them would agree and say, sure, let's agree that the universe began to exist 14 billion years ago, but it doesn't have to be God who created it. It could be anything, it could be something. To which you could agree and say, you're right, there could be something or someone that created it, but let's ask some more questions on who this something or someone could be. What kind of attributes should this being possess that created the universe? It's a simple reasoning. Now, when you ponder on these questions, some of the attributes are mentioned in the slide. These things come to mind. The first thing that comes to mind is intelligence. Why? Because when you look at the universe, when you even take a look at a plant cell and view it through a microscope, you could see the intelligence behind it. Right? It's not something random. Due to randomness, you don't see things being so functional and so beautiful. Ever carried a puppy or a kitten? Could you call it an accidental byproduct of nature? Or do you see an intelligent design there? The first trait that comes in your head should be intelligence, because that is one of the traits that we see. The second trait is free will. I'll explain what free will is in detail, but a simple description of free will would be the ability to choose and act upon that. So in order for the universe to come into existence, right, if a being who has an intelligence created it, then he must also have free will because he chose to create it. It was not something automatic. Otherwise, we would see a bunch of universes come in and go out of existence. And three, power, obviously, because in order to create such a massive universe, this being, whoever it is, has to have an enormous amount of power. Now, if a skeptic is genuinely seeking answers, some of them would at least agree to some of these traits, and you could add a couple more, but these would be sufficient. And when he agrees, then you tell them that the God that we define in the Bible is the one who is enormously powerful, who is a free agent. He's not an idol, he's not someone who's created, all right? He possesses free will and he is wise. The Bible calls God infinitely wise, an infinitely knowledgeable being. All right? Now you could take a step forward and say, someone who created the universe should also have a no beginning. Because if he had a beginning, then there should be another cause that created him, and this would continue. So the Bible again describes God as no beginning and no end. He is timeless. He doesn't have a beginning and he never dies. Simple. When you speak about these attributes, you will then tell your skeptical friend that these are the traits which God possesses. You could call it another being, but we call him God. Simple as that. For the second skeptic who ponders on the problem of pain and suffering, all right, first you need to take a step and differentiate the kinds of evil there are. There are two kinds of evils in this world. One is moral evil and natural evil, all right? Moral evil is something that humans do to one another, such as murder, theft, cheating, adultery, and so forth. These are these are evil actions committed by humans, and we call them moral evil because it is humans who are doing it. And the second one is is natural evil. These are natural disasters that happen regularly in the world. This includes tsunamis, earthquakes, sometimes genetic diseases, or whatsoever that falls under something that humans don't have full control over. This is a natural evil part. Regarding moral evil, right? Where does it stem from and why does it exist? Why doesn't God stop it? Uh, this is the question, right? Because when the skeptic is asking you, if God exists, why is there so much of pain and suffering in this world? One of the evil is moral evil. So you need to ask, uh, so you need to answer him why God doesn't stop it. Now, before we go there, we need to understand in detail what this is, right? Because human beings possess free will, right? We have the ability to love and also the ability to hate. We cannot have the ability to hate without having the ability to love. You know, God created hands for us, right? The same hands that can help others and uplift others can also be used for destruction. I can use the same hands to punch someone or help someone, all right? But hands by themselves are not morally good or evil. It's the freedom that I have that helps me or enables me to do a moral good or evil. Now, God can stop it, all right? It's not that God lacks the power to stop it, but if just imagine your life, all right? Think of every possible sin that you could commit, and God is stopping you, either by sending you an angel or just snapping his fingers. Let's say you try to insult someone, and God shuts your mouth. Let's say you try to punch someone, and God holds your hand back. Now, that is a world where you can only have evil thoughts and then you cannot follow through. And then no one would perform any evil action. But that would be a world like robots because you're being forced to do certain actions or you're being forced not to do certain actions. You're not a free being. And then everyone would be good, but they would be good not out of volition, but because it's impossible to do the bad thing. Now, that is not the kind of righteousness God expects. God wants people to choose love out of their own free will. He doesn't want you to love people by having no choice, by forcing you to love someone or forcing you to love God and do good to others. There is no value in that, according to God. That is why stopping all morally evil actions would just eliminate freedom. God sometimes does stop some evil actions in the Bible, as we see, but he doesn't do it all the time because if he does it all the time, then free will is meaningless. And if free will doesn't exist, there's no point in loving God or loving one another, right? So this would be the answer to the problem of moral evil. But then, oh, just because before I forget, I've added a picture of character from an anime. If any of you are interested, this is a good one. You could watch, you could learn certain things from it. The reason for this particular picture is that in this particular series, there is a book called Death Note, and when you write someone's name on it, he dies. So, which is a moral action because a human being is killing another through other means. That was the purpose. It's a good anime, you could watch it. The second one is the natural evil. Now, this is very important because there is no easy escape or there is no easy answer from the Christian to the skeptic. All right. Uh, Now, what I've explained what natural evil is. This is natural disasters, right? Earthquakes, tsunamis, a house collapses, and someone falls. As you can see in the picture on the right-hand side, this is from another anime. There is a woman who is trapped. All right, the house is broken and she's trapped. She's about to die. All right, this is not a human action, at least in this context, but this is a natural disaster that happened, and she's dying. All right. Now, where is God? Why doesn't God help people in this world? There are many people who died of tsunamis, earthquake, volcano eruptions. I could name a couple more. There is no easy answer. First thing you have to know is that God is not our genie. Ever heard of genie from Aladdin? You know, Aladdin rubs a lamp and the genie pops out. And whatever Aladdin asks, this genie performs it, right? Because his wish is genie's command. But God is not our genie. He does not answer all our prayers. Now, this is a sad thing to follow, but God is not our genie. He's not here to please you. He's not here to do everything you ask for him. Now, why is this? I hope there was a clear-cut answer in the Bible. I wish there was a chapter called Natural Evil and Reasons Why God Allows It. But unfortunately, there is no direct answer. But what we have from the Bible is God's character, and we can derive some answers out of it. One of them is we know that in the beginning, when God created the universe, when God created Adam and Eve, he gave him the dominion over this earth. That means, as humans, we rule the planet. There is no other creature that is close to humans in terms of intelligence, right? That is why we are the rulers. And God gave that power to mankind and to have this sort of dominion over all the animals, fishes, birds, and every creature that exists. And if God gave us dominion over this earth, but God keeps interfering all the time, then this particular purpose would be contradictory, right? And there would be no sense in giving us the dominion. This is one reason. And you see also in the Bible that God doesn't interfere all the time. You see him intervene sometimes, he enforces certain plans, but not all the time. This is God's operation style. And God's ultimate plan is for ultimate restoration, which means God's plan is to have new heavens and new earth. And he's not interested in fixing every single thing in this world every single time because his ultimate plan is ultimate restoration. These are some of the reasons you could give to your skeptical friend. But always remember that even on atheism, there is no answer. An atheist, in order to call something bad, he has to say that something has to be good. Now, when you're talking about natural disasters in this world, like earthquakes or volcanoes, what is your unbelieving friend comparing it with in order to call it right or wrong? Now, if I give you money, and in order for you to tell that it's a fake currency, you need to have a true currency. You need to know what a true currency looks like, right? Now, where is this unbelieving friend getting an idea from rather than his own imaginations? And why should we trust that? You could also press on that question, which would lead to a interesting conversation. All right. And also, any of you are interested, since this was for youth, and this topic is for youth apologetics, I thought adding some of these pictures from anime would strike an interest. Have a look on it if you haven't watched it already. This is also something you could learn to strike a good conversations with your unbelieving friends by giving these examples. It keeps the conversation more interesting. All right. Now, there's another important thing here, which is what not to say to your unbelieving friends. Now, you might have heard from some preachers or some sermons who say things like God plans on using natural evil to improve character. God helps you if you pray harder, have more faith, and all your troubles will go away. This is absolutely wrong. Please do not tell this to anyone. All right? There are many examples in the real world, as you can see in the slide, what I've written, that are counterproductive. Many children, all right, babies suffer with genetic disorders, they die, all right, and their parents have also walked out of the faith when their children have suffered such cruelty. Now, what exactly is the character development here? So never give that example that God uses natural evil. God could use it, but not everything that's happening in this world due to natural evil is something part of God's plan to use it to develop characters. This is not something you need to say. And God doesn't, I mean, just, and, and God doesn't take all your troubles away if you have more faith. That is counterintuitive to what Jesus taught. Jesus taught that in this world you will have trouble, but you will overcome them. He didn't say that your troubles will go away. So if you have heard any preachers or if you have read any articles which would teach certain things, please take a step back, think this through, compare it with the Bible, and then give an answer. Because you might be pushing someone away from the faith. Because if you speak unreasonable things and the skeptic finds it really blind, he would not come to God again. He would consider it meaningless. And I wanted to add another meme here. Uh, so one of them in the meme, he says, the atheist on the left side, he says, if God healed my neighbor who has cancer, I will believe in him. And the believer says, but your neighbor believes in God despite having cancer. Now, this was very interesting because oftentimes your unbelievers would bring up examples of kids in Africa who are starving to death. And they say, why? Where is your God? Where is your loving God and helpful God? But many other people in Africa, they are believers. Have you seen their faith? Their faith is very strong. And it's surprising, isn't it? The people who are in first world countries who can sit in their couch, watch Netflix all day and relax, they're complaining that God isn't helping and they would believe in God if God helped kids in Africa. But people in Africa who are actually suffering every single time, and even in our country, in India, where many of us are suffering through persecutions, we are not quitting the faith. They are not quitting their faith. They're much stronger believers. I had this conversation with one of my uh, unbelieving friends, and it went pretty well. So I just thought to include this particular example here. And another thing that you could answer regarding natural evil is to remember the second commandment in the New Testament. All right. What does God say? It says, love your neighbor as yourself. All right. And in times of natural disaster, when someone asks, why isn't God helping? Because he wants you to help one another. Even in the story of Good Samaritan, who picked up the guy who was fallen on the ground? It is not God. It was another human. Now, of course, God could help him. Of course, God could just snap his finger and heal him instantly. God has done that to many people in the Bible. But the point of that example is to let humans know that we ought to be caring for one another. Love your neighbor as yourself, with an example, simply means help those who are in need. Whenever it's possible for you to help, please do so. All right. Love and caring for each other is what would make a big difference in this world. As you can see in the picture, there's a guy from an anime who's helping his sister who's injured. So we ought to help one another as well. And which brings me to the third kind of skeptic who would question that why should he care if God exists or not? His life isn't going to change anyway. Now, to those people, this is a simple answer I have written. Uh, So the picture here demonstrates that there is an arrow, there's an arrow traveling to a destination. Now, if there is no God, where is our life traveling to? We're just born and we're dying. And whatever you do, none of that carries any ultimate significance. Life has no value if God doesn't exist. Think about it. To those unbeliever friends who consider this to be a question, you could ask them, why is their life any more valuable than that of a dog or an ant or a hyena? They're born, they die. They do something when they're alive and they die. None of what they do ultimately matters, right? Think about it. If your life ends at the grave, then it absolutely makes no difference whether you live as Stalin, who murdered so many people, or like any other saint. Let's say Mother Teresa. What difference does it make if your life is gonna end at the grave? Since one's destiny is ultimately unrelated to one's behavior, you could live as you please. There is no justice for many people in this world if life ends at the grave. But if God exists, He rose Jesus from the dead, we have our hope in Christ. And the ultimate hope is that our life does not end at the grave, and we have eternal life. That's what makes our life valuable. Our life has meaning, value, and purpose, right? This is something you could share with the kind of a friend who would ask, uh, why should he care about life, if whether or not God exists or not? Which brings me to my last slide, which is the conclusion. So what should we learn from this session? What was my motivation and what did I expect you to learn? Is to learn to defend your faith, right? Our faith should not be blind. It is rooted in reason and evidence. It ought to be rooted in reason and evidence. And we have to do the best we can to answer skeptics. You know, in the book of First Peter 3:15, it says that always be ready to give a defense All right. So we have to be ready. We have to be equipped with God's knowledge. And in order to do that, we need to start spending more time with God and ask God. We commonly pray for food, job, we we pray for money, we pray for cars, but have we ever prayed for God to help him to help him teach you more about the Bible? How many of us have prayed? You can ask yourself, all right? Was there any time that you prayed God to help you understand a particular passage in the Bible, help you understand how to strike a conversation with your unbelieving friend? We rarely pray this, but it should be the other way around. Pray for spiritual things. The material things, they will come later. And even if they do not come, it's still fine. We ought to focus on spiritual things because those are the things that matter. So, in conclusion, I hope I taught you to learn to defend your faith. But yes, this is my last slide, and I'd be happy to take your questions if any of you have them. But if not, you could always write to me, write them in the Zoom chat, or if you have my number, you could just write them to me. I will share anything I know. Okay. Sunil, can you hear me? Hi, Sunil. Hello.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
Yeah,
Yeah, we are just keeping the time open for questions.
sure.
It's on. The mic is on. You would like to speak? Franklin?
Yes.
Yes. So if they have any questions, they will ask.
Yeah.
People have young people, especially Rahul, Suresh, Shuman. Any questions? He's also a software professional. Yes. So he studied his B in Bengal and studied you open your cam, Franklin?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Generally speaking, yes. What work he has faced with them. I have a couple of friends in Germany. Right? So, yeah, Franklin, hi, Shimon here.
You're not audible. It's not clear.
Yeah, this is Shimon here. Yeah, this one, right? I cannot get much closer. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, so the only thing that I wanted to ask is based on practical experience. Since you are in Germany, you would have
Mhm.
interacted with lot many people, youngsters over there. So, what do you see as a roadblock for youngsters over there? The roadblock for them to accept Christ?
Yeah. So when I interacted with some of them who were genuinely seeking God, they had these questions. And at least with respect to these young believers, I would say their roadblocks were purely intellectual. They wanted some sort of reasoning to know that faith in God is not blind. Christianity is not just like any other religion, like Buddhism or something, and each person has his own beliefs and things like this. So they wanted proper reasoning, and I was also able to tell him why Christianity is true by pointing out to the historical reasoning of Jesus. And And some of them had other questions like pain and suffering, and I would say this was the biggest hurdle. So if God is loving, God exists, God is all good, all powerful, why is there so much pain and suffering? And the discussion didn't last just for one day. It went on for 1 to 2 weeks, and we were able to make good progress. One of my friends is now a Christian after having 2 weeks of discussion. He was an unbeliever before. So yeah, hurdles, I would say some of them are these questions. Uh, but for others who are not genuinely seeking, I would say their hurdle is just themselves. They just want to enjoy sin this world without being held accountable, without feeling guilty. And to them, you could just pray for them because they're not genuinely seeking God. You could just pray for them, show them love and kindness. But yes, hope did that answer your question, Sunil?
Makes sense.
I can't hear you.
Yes, it does, brother. Thank you so much.
Okay, welcome.
Anybody has any?
Yeah, just one more question.
Yeah, so I have a question that these days, like, I mean, when we were young, like, we didn't have so much of, possibility of getting answers online, but we have so many websites and so many, options now, like, God questions and things like that, where a lot of youth now, because they know how to get their answers, right? And so why, I mean, do you think that's adequate, and what are the other ways youth today would need, to get their answers besides, the access and information boom which is already there? What is it that, we need? What is it that the youth require now? Because a lot of answers are available if they're searching for answers. Uh,
Yes.
what are the
Yeah.
conversations, things required
What
now?
they need is, like you said, there are a lot of resources online. All they need is just the willingness and the desire to learn. That is all. Because a lot of information, a lot of resources are available online. Like you mentioned, gotquestions.org. Answer some of them. I've seen some of their answers, which were good. Reasonable Faith is another website. This is my favorite. I could also send you some more articles. But yes, the only thing young people need right now is the desire, the spirit, the willingness to learn and spend time with God. And that's it. God is going to teach you. Even if there are no resources, God is your ultimate teacher. As long as you're willing to learn, you ask Him for knowledge, He's going to give it to you. And these are the kind of prayers God usually answers. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sure. Thank you, David.
Welcome.
Any more questions?
Yes. No questions. Yes.
Franklin, no more
Yes.
questions, and we are closing. And we appreciate you and your time. We had some problem in connecting the amplifier, and we have all IT professionals here, top officers and top theologians.
I
They
see. Thank you.
appreciate your time. Thank you so much. God bless you. Say
Thank you
everyone
for
bye.
giving me the opportunity.
Everyone
Bye,
says
everyone.
bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice
Bye.
day. Bye.